Officials on both sides of the aisle condemning the anonymous article, demanding that the New York Times, identify its author. This as the list of White House officials who have now denied writing an opinion piece grows. Here to discuss, political contributor Tammy, who is also the Independent Women's Voice president. Emily Jashinsky, she's a commentary writer for the Washington Examiner. Emily, let me start with you. D.C., it's got to be, what's going on down there, because everyone up here is playing a guessing game.
Well, yeah, this is like the best possible way to get the D.C. rumor mill going. I mean, this is just what people live for down here, and that's exactly what's happening. I mean, the town is abuzz with, speculation about who this might be. People in Washington love this kind of thing. I suspect that people in other parts of the country do not love this kind of thing and see it as the way Washington sort of plays a sick game with politics that are impacting their lives. But as for what's happening in Washington, the rumor mill is abuzz. I can say that.
I tell you, Tammy, I didn't want to pass immediate judgment on this thing, and so the more I read it, the more I thought about it. Ultimately, I think it's a diss of the Trump voter. And if you think about this, it's the same old thing, right? The establishment whining about the fact that someone is in office. I mean, think about this. He's not a conservative, even though he ran on the Republican ticket. You, whoever you are, don't determine who the Republican Party is or what it is. It is the Republican voter who overwhelmingly picked President Trump over a list, the most elitist list you've ever seen of conservative candidates. This is who the Republican voter wanted, and ultimately is who the American voter wanted.
Well, that's it. And look, this is exactly the reason why Trump is president. That's what's fascinating about this. And the fact is, of course, is that it's never really been about Donald Trump. It's always been about the voter. It's been about this disdain, this contempt that the establishment has had for voters for now generations. They truly believe that they're better than everyone else, and they can't stand what Donald Trump represents. And then they loathe him personally more because of the success. So what I saw in that piece, and this is what's also fascinating, because they're incompetent, the general bureaucracy or whoever this person believes they represent, is the implication that, sure, things are going well, but that would have been happening anyway.
Sure.
In other words, Donald Trump has nothing to do with this. This is what we would have done. That's a lie. These are people who've destroyed generations of lives, who in the end of the George W. Bush term, destroyed the economy. Barack Obama took that and then destroyed the health care system. But before that, it was about a system that lied to the people and allowed themselves to get so disconnected that this occurred. So this is, of course, it's an attack on the voter.
Sure.
It's an attack on our system itself, and it's filled with not just lies, but a reminder to every American why Donald Trump is president.
Emily, and one thing I do find interesting is that there seems to be a certain degree of universal condemnation, if you will, of the New York Times. I'm surprised at how many people on the left are saying, this anonymous source thing has gone way too far. If you've got someone and they're important, they're critical, and they think they're doing this as some sort of, to help our country, let's find out who that person is. We've gone too far with this anonymous source thing and more, speculation on who's dissing the president now.
Yeah, there may be an increasing, which this shouldn't, just be occurring to them now, but there may be increasing awareness on the left that this can cut both ways. So, like, when we set the norm that we're going to just quote anonymous sources so cavalierly, that can be turned around, on Democrats as well. And so there may be this is sort of like increasing awareness of that. And also in this case, I think the left wants this person to be outed because they don't support anybody who works for the Trump administration, whether they're saying something positive or negative about the president. And so there's some element of bloodlust, I would say, here as well. I
want to bring in Bill McGurn. He's, of course, with the Wall Street Journal. Bill, I think maybe the only difference yesterday with that article, which felt coordinated after the Woodward book, and then the last week when the establishment, the elites on both sides took the opportunity to pile on President Trump. But the idea that there was going to be a coup, for lack of a better word, right? They were going to invoke the 25th Amendment, and that the president was so unstable that he was such a wild card that they were going to have to actually have a coup and get him out of office.
Well, you get to say that because it's anonymous. Look, in some senses, this is business as usual in a White House because there's always someone leaking to the press, their agenda, and the people in the West Wing are trying to figure out who spoke to the press that night. If you read Bob Woodward's book, you can usually tell the people that are praised are the ones that have spoken to him. This takes it to a new level, and it's just very hard to evaluate the claims. Again, as a former staffer, I'm kind of intrigued. What does the word senior mean? It could mean 100 different people. It said Trump administration. It didn't say West Wing or White House. So it could be a lot of people. And that's one of the problems with something anonymous. I think there are times, if you're writing about a mafioso or something, where anonymous can be important. But it means you can't evaluate things. And also, people are a lot braver. And it's one of the things I don't like about Twitter, when people tweet not under their names. You don't know who they are.
Well, then let me ask you, Bill, the notion that this person remains anonymous because they want to continue to do the good work of keeping President Trump in check.
Right. Well, we have no way of evaluating that because we don't know who the person is. We don't know how senior this person really is. Look, I think in any White House, there's a lot of attempts to persuade the president. I'm pretty happy with a lot of the policies, not on trade, but on a lot of other policies that the president has. I do think he has to get some credit. Even if he's persuaded against his original instincts, the fact that he's persuadable, I think, is good, and I think we've got some good policy of it. But I mean, when it's not going to do anything to assuage, to persuade the Trump supporters that they're wrong. When the president thinks that I mean, he may be wrong that the press is the enemy of the people, but it's certainly an enemy of Donald Trump in a lot of ways.
Well, and this isn't even really about persuading him. With the Woodward book is, of course, presenting the idea that papers are being stolen off of his desk, that he's being tricked, that he's being maneuvered in a way that he's unaware of. And this, of course, is we did not elect anonymous sources to the New York Times to run the country. We wouldn't do that. And so to claim that you're doing the nation's business of keeping us safe by doing the opposite of what the Constitution requires and what a duly elected president requires and what an administration in this framework requires indicates that you're the opposite. But who knew that those who are complaining most loudly about some nefarious cabal trying to control the president from afar, and they were complaining actually about themselves, that's what we've got here.
Well, they don't want to call themselves a deep state. They took the moniker the stable state.
Yeah, right. The steady state. It's ridiculous. Look, I think there's a place, as someone that was in government at a high level, I think there's a place for an honorable resignation. If you say, I cannot in good conscience do this, but then you do it, and you say, I can't do it, and you explain who you are. You can even go off quietly. But I think the least honorable thing is to disagree and remain burrowed in there. I think it's a terrible disservice. And if people used to ask me, do you do things that you don't agree with? And when I worked for president, yes, there were some. I had to write very eloquent testimonies to ethanol subsidies.
By the way, everyone watching this show does something they don't agree with at work from time to time.
So I wrote these things on ethanol that I probably don't agree with. But you have to ask yourself, does the good outweigh the bad? Are the more important issues? And I supported, and also it was the Bush administration, not the McGurn administration.
Wow.